Joining us right now, retired Army Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg. He has a new book out, and you know his service. He also spent time in the White House. He was there with President Trump, serving with all four national security advisors to the president. He was involved in every major national security decision of the time. His new book that he has out, War by Other Means, a general in the Trump White House. And we have General Keith Kellogg joining us via phone. Sir, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Congrats on the book.
Thanks, Dana. Thanks for having me, and I appreciate you mentioning it.
Of course, absolutely. I've got to get your reaction to just some of the audio that we had played where now, as we were learning during testimony this week before the Senate Armed Services Committee, now we have the Pentagon saying, well, ISIS-K could be ready to attack the West in 6 months. And now, of course, with Afghanistan being just basically a free-for-all, they would have a staging area there to do it. That wasn't at all unexpected that this would happen. What is your reaction to hearing this now?
Yeah, Dana, look, I'm not surprised at all, because that was one of our major concerns, is how you got out of Afghanistan. Because frankly, the Trump administration, we wanted to be out of Afghanistan for strategic purposes, so we could focus on China and we could focus on Russia. But it was how you got out. And we came up with a condition-based withdrawal to get out. What has happened now is that when President Biden just said, well, we're going to get out by a date certain, which was the 31st of August, they just left. What you really created there was a terrorist megastate. Think about this. If you look at the map, to the west is Iran, which is a state sponsor of terrorism. They're trying to get a nuclear weapon. They've got the largest missile inventory in the entire Middle East. Then in the middle, you've got Afghanistan, which is ungoverned territory. And it's not only run by the Taliban, but it's actually run by the Haqqani network, which is a known terrorist network. And their interior minister of the Haqqani network is currently got a $10 million bounty on his head from our own FBI. And then just to the east, with a contiguous border, is Pakistan, that is run by their intelligence organization, the ISI, and their military, and they've got nuclear weapons. I mean, when you put them all together, you've created a terrorist megastate out there. And it's ungoverned territory in the middle of Afghanistan, because the Taliban can't control it. So, yeah, you've created this, and it's something we were very concerned about, is the reason why we intended to have a continued presence in Afghanistan. And we told the Taliban that clearly when we went through the original Doha agreement. But now you've ended up with what you've got, and now it's unpredictable because there's no way to actually monitor it. You know, we used to, when you have an embassy in a country, that's generally where you've got your CIA that operates out of that, and your intelligence communities operate out of that. We don't even have an embassy in Afghanistan anymore.
Yeah, no embassy, and we don't have a ground surveillance network either. So if ISIS-K, we're talking to General Keith Kellogg, whose new book War by Other Means is out. Without that ground surveillance and without any way of actually, which we took 20 years to build up, because prior to then we just had, from what I understand, satellite surveillance. We have actually really no best guesstimate as to when ISIS-K could be ready or what they would do. We know that they dislike us. We know that. That's all.
Yeah, and it's actually probably worse than that. The intelligence community has not covered themselves with glory when it's come to Afghanistan. There were reports even coming out today, I think the Wall Street Journal had something today, where there was actually a schism within the intelligence community about how long it would take the Taliban to take over Afghanistan. We had a pretty good indication that they were going to do it pretty rapidly. And part of our concern, at least when President Trump was there, he would pick up the phone and he called the chief Taliban negotiator, Mullah Baradar, and told him in no uncertain terms, he did that on the 3rd of March, 2020, after we signed the Doha Agreement, hey, if you screw around with this agreement, we are going to come at you with the full force of the United States of America. And because of that, the Taliban said, oh, okay, I kind of understand this. And we did not have a single American killed, not one, from 29 February 2020 till 20 January 2021. So they respected force. Well, Biden didn't pick up the phone and call anybody in the Taliban, and that was one of the reasons why it fell apart so fast, is he had no ability to talk to anybody, didn't try to call anybody, and he went from conditions-based to a date-based, and because of that, we're basically run out of the country. You know, people forget, when he gave up Bagram Air Base, that was the largest prison in Afghanistan. It had 5,000 prisoners. None of them were good guys. It's nobody you'd want over for Thanksgiving dinner. And these were the bad guys, and yet he let it happen. And now we've got not only no eyes, we actually have no ears either. And we're going to have a very, very hard time predicting anything going forward.
And we're talking to General Keith Kellogg. His new book, War by Other Means, a general in the Trump White House. As you know, he's a national security advisor to the previous president, Donald Trump. And sir, too, with this, I thought that was interesting because that is true. That's a good reminder that Bagram was, I mean, a major, the biggest prison there. And of course, these were individuals that were involved in acts against our soldiers and acts against the United States. Because during the negotiation for all of this, because there was a point at some point when Trump was, the president was looking to negotiate a way out of Afghanistan. He did not want to commit to a forever conflict. And that was one of the things that helped propel him, I think, into the White House, because a lot of Americans, I mean, I grew up with us in the Middle East. And I mean, I just remember being in 7th grade and shock and awe was taking place. And it's all some generations have ever known. And he wanted to extricate us from that. And of course, you know, there's always going to be criticism, because when you get involved in a conflict that really it's difficult to say whether or not something was a total full out victory or not, there's going to be negotiation regardless. And he was criticized for it. And I was going to, General, have you speak to the time that he was going to have them at Camp David. And then, of course, the Taliban couldn't stop being terrorists. They engaged in another terror attack, ended up killing innocent people. And that's when the administration called it off and said, well, you violated the Doha Agreement, which they were already technically in violation of, and they ended it. But the administration, sir, doesn't get any credit for that. None you or the other people advising the president at the time don't get any credit for that.
Yeah, the Camp David issue was really pretty humorous at the time. In fact, we were actually in the Situation Room, Dana, when we were talking about it, and the president was really getting frustrated. He says, look, we're going to have to negotiate our way out of this, and we're going to have to show strength to do this. Why don't I just bring everybody back to Camp David, and we'll put them up there, you know, feed them a warm beer and cold pizza and see what happens after. And not everybody, most of the people in the room said, oh, you can't do that. And he said, and the president, is a very good student, he said, wait a second, we did this before. And he looked around the room and said, yeah, you're right, Mr. President. We did. President Carter did it when he brought Begin from Israel and Anwar Sadat in from Egypt, and he took him up there to Camp David for 12 days and put him secluded up there. And that came up with the Camp David Accords. I said, yeah, you can, Mr. President. You're going to take some blowback on it, but it's not such a bad idea. His reason, Dana, that we had to do a negotiated settlement, he really believed that if we had a negotiated settlement, we'd have U.S. presence there. We told the Taliban that. But he also said strategically, we have not been able to focus on the Chinese or the Russians out there. We're so focused on terrorism and counterterrorism that we forgot what we're supposed to be doing in the rest of the world. And he was pushed back on a little bit. Mm-hmm. And yet, to the president's credit, you know, and it came up during this meeting in the Situation Room, everybody said, oh, no, we're focused in on it. And I countered and I said, yeah, then please tell me how come the Chinese and the Russians have active hypersonic missile batteries and we don't even, and ours is still in R&D, because we canceled that program during the Obama administration, and we put $3 billion into hypersonics. For people that are listening, this is a missile system, a hypersonic missile that flies at Mach 5, 2 miles a second. And there's no defense on it. And we don't even have a missile system. I said, that's where our biggest concern ought to be, is the Chinese and the Russians. And because we're so fixated on Afghanistan, we need to extricate ourselves, but it's got to be in a reasonable manner. Right. It's got to be a conditioned manner. We have to have troops that may stay there, and we have to have our hand on their shoulder. And now we've got nothing, because they threw that agreement away.
And of course, we just had the headlines of China launching that hypersonic missile that traveled the Earth, apparently too. And now we are kind of caught, in a way, a deer in headlights, talking with General Keith Kellogg. And this is one of the things that you and the administration, which I think I and others that have been watching what has been happening with Hong Kong and elsewhere, we're always appreciative, I think, of the stance that the administration had towards China and trying to do everything possible to stall out any potential conflict from increasing in intensity, or any hostilities, rather, I should say, increasing in intensity. Because right now, to marry both of these topics together, China's saying that they're going to help Taliban rebuild their country. We know this is part of their Belt and Road Initiative. We know that they would love to have a footprint and help develop this land bridge over and have this access to Iran also. And China and Russia, they've been doing military exercises. It seems we've been playing a little bit of catch up, and now they're going to be able to have access, General, to all of these rare earth elements that Afghanistan is rich with. And of course, that's another potential. That's another potential threat to the interest of the United States. Talk to us a little bit about this, because we knew this administration was anticipating this. We could tell by a number of the stances, not just militarily and in terms of planning with budget and with defensive planning, but also sanctions and economic positions. But now it seems like we're caught. We are in a situation, and I'm not quite sure how this administration has any kind of plans to catch up.
Yeah, I'm convinced, Dana, they don't. The more I look at it, I'm a big believer in patterns, and I'm looking at the guy that's the most important person in any foreign relations activities or national security discussions, the President of the United States. And I think he just wants to whistle past the graveyard. I don't think he cares about taking anything or doing anything about, I don't care if it's immigration or national security. And when it comes to China, remember this, President Biden went up to the UN General Assembly, gave a speech up there. He never mentioned China once. And China is the emergent threat we have to be aware of. And they're building a base right now, from our indications are, right next to the Afghan border. They're going to be involved in Afghanistan. They're going to be involved in that country, and they look at us, and they look at what we did in Afghanistan as a sign of weakness. Look, the entire 4 years we were in the White House, the Chinese never flew, not one time. Then they penetrate the Air Defense Identification Zone, the ADIZ of Taiwan. They flew over 130 aircraft in one day into the ADIZ of Taiwan, and it's purely it's an influencing threat that's going out there. They would have never done that with us. If they had tried to do something with like that to Taiwan when President Trump was there, he would have picked up the phone, called the 7th Fleet Commander, said, "I want you to sortie Carrier Battle Group 5, which is the USS Ronald Reagan from Japan. Just go around, have it float around Taiwan 3, 4, 5, 140 times." And send a very clear message to the Chinese: you're only going to go so far, and we think you're expanding more than we want you to expand, because you're not going to get more expansions of the South China Sea or anywhere else. Remember, President Xi, when he came into the Rose Garden, President Obama stood in the Rose Garden and told President Obama and the American people, we are not going to fortify the South China Sea islands, the Spratlys. Within a year, they did.
Wow.
So you have to push back on these guys. And if you don't push back, you're going to have a major problem down the road, and we have not pushed back. And I don't think President Biden, very candidly, Dan, has the will to do it.
Goodness. General Keith Kellogg, the new book, War by Other Means, a General in the Trump White House. Congratulations, sir, on the success of the book. And thank you so much for what you've done for our country, your service advising the previous administration, and your continued, you're speaking out continually now. We do appreciate it and your time today. Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks, Dana. Thanks for having me.